channel. My name is Liz. And oh, I just hit 9,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. That is so exciting. Next stop, 1 million. Let's go. Anyway, so I've had a few requests for doing hard candy. I did have one video there that I did as a quick music video, but I'm actually going to do one of my tutorials more in depth and give you more information. And I'm also going to show you two different recipes. So I'm going to show you one that if you only have Cannabutter, to do with Cannabutter. And the other one is if you've got tincture, how you can now make a really good tasting hard candy. Alright, so as always, I'm going to jump right into our ingredients, what we need, and then get everything together to make some awesome candy. Okay, so one of the most important things when you're doing candy making, hard candy making, is humidity. Humidity is a huge factor. If it is too humid in your home, don't bother trying. If it is summer and it is too humid, don't bother trying unless you have a dehumidifier or air conditioner. So I made these the other day and it was a little too humid, and that's what's going to happen is they're going to come out sticky and tacky and they're just going to meld together. So optimal humidity is 35%. However, 45 to 50 absolute maximum. 50 is but 45 you're okay at. Sugar. Alright, so for our Cannabutter hard candies, you are going to need 1 cup of white sugar, half a cup of corn syrup, a half a cup of water, and a 1/4 cup of Cannabutter, and a half a teaspoon of soy or the other one, sunflower lecithin. Yes, you can use the powder. If it is granular, you may need to strain it, but I believe the powder will work as well. So that's what you're going to need for your Cannabutter ones. Now, if you are a tincture person, you can make Canna sugar and Canna syrup from your tincture. If you don't already have those made up, I do have the videos that show you how to make those. So you can make up your Canna sugar and your Canna syrup. So for your tincture, candy, sorry, gap there. And this is the way, and the reason why I did this is so that you don't have the taste of alcohol. This way the alcohol has been evaporated off and it gives you a really nice tasting candy versus probably most of you who just use tinctures straightforward, always have a contend with that taste of alcohol. This is going to help eliminate that problem altogether. So what you are going to need is a half a cup of white sugar, regular sugar, a half a cup of Canna sugar. Yes, you can use 1 cup of Canna sugar. I just prefer, again, for taste, to do the half and half. You're going to use a 1/4 cup of Canna syrup and a 1/4 cup of light corn syrup and a half a cup of water. And again, whatever flavors that you would like to use and colors to make it. Again, this is going to come out very green, so you may not want that color. You may want some other color. And again, the white for the solid background. Again, more I'll go into detail. Now, the nice thing about using this recipe is that you don't have to use an emulsifier like Gore Gum. We're not trying to stick butter in places it has no business being and trying to make it stick. So these are all natural ingredients, and that's why I find this recipe works so much better. Alright, so the equipment that you're going to need is first a cold pot of water with ice. This is for us to stop the cooking process when our candy reaches temperature. You are going to need a small or medium heat transferent pot, non-heat transferent, sorry. Heavy bottom is preferred, and non-heat transferent is there is no dark spots in the bottom of your pot. So that means that there is no spots that get hotter than any other spots. You have proper heat distribution and your candy isn't going to burn in, it's not going to be hotter in one spot than another. You will need a spatula, your candy thermometer, your candy molds. Yes, I know they're red. And my gummies, I say don't use red molds. For hard candies are perfectly fine, but not for gummies. Or if you're making lollipops, there's this type of lollipop mold, which is a 3D mold. Or you've got the flat molds that you can get as well. So you're going to get those prepared and have those standby on hand. And I'm going to use these And that's probably it. Now, when you're making hard candies, you also want to make sure that your molds are small. Remember, you want it to be in your mouth. You don't want it to be like, wah, wah, wah. You want it to feel good in your mouth, not be oversized. And that's about all the recommendation I have for your candy molds. We will get started first on the Cannabutter recipe. All right, so for our Cannabutter candies, you are going to add your 1 cup of sugar, your 1/2 cup of corn syrup, and your 1/2 cup of water. You're going to stir that until it is combined and your sugar has started to dissolve. And then we're going to turn our heat on to medium-high. Oops, sorry, I always forget. So you're also going to need a cup of hot water with a pastry brush or a paintbrush to clean the sides of the pot down for any sugar crystals. And once our sugar and water are there combined, you're going to turn your heat on to medium-high, and you're just going to continue to stir it until your syrup begins to boil. The moment that it begins to boil, we're going to stop stirring, and we're going to attach our candy thermometer and cook our syrup to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, you always just want to make sure that you wash down any sugar crystals that you see form on the side of the pot. The reason for that is so that your candy doesn't crystallize. If you leave sugar crystals there, it can cause your candy to crystallize. And when you're stirring, you always want to make sure to go around the edges of your pot. The sugar likes to sit in there. So you just want to make sure that none of the sugar is sitting or forming on the crystallizing there on the bottom of the pot. So you can see or I hope you can see, bubbles just starting to form there around the edge, so it's starting to boil. At this point, I am going to stop stirring, and I'm just going to clean off any sugar off the edges. And I'm going to attach my candy thermometer. And as I said, we are going to cook this to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The moment we hit 300 degrees, we're going to dunk the bottom of the pot into our ice water. And at first, when it starts to boil, it's going to be cooking off any impurities in your water and your sugar. So it will bubble up like this for a moment, but then in a few moments, as soon as those cook off, it will settle down. And the other thing is that once it starts with the boiling and you've attached your thermometer, just turn your temperature down to about medium. And while your syrup is cooking, you just want to get your molds all ready and prepared, because once our syrup is ready, we need to work fairly quickly. And then just to let you know, so when you attach your candy thermometer, it'll go up pretty quickly, and then you'll notice that it's going to sit in around 220, 222, probably for about 10-12 minutes, and that's while it's mainly cooking the water off. After that, the temperature will start to increase, and it will start to increase fairly rapidly. So you don't want to go too far away from the kitchen right after that point. So if you do need to take a quick little break, and don't forget, you've got about probably 10 minutes of safe leeway right now. Alright, so I am at 300 degrees. Remove your candy thermometer. Dunk it in your ice cold water to stop the cooking. So we just want to wait for it to stop bubbling there a little bit. Turn off your heat. There we go. You don't want to leave it too long because it'll start to solidify on the bottom. Now I'm going to add in the butter. Now be very, very careful because you are working with molten lava. You're going to just start to gently just kind of get that there. Now if your syrup does start to solidify too much on the bottom, just put it back on the burner. It's still warm enough to melt that. And now we are going to get our lecithin. And we are going to add in a generous half teaspoon of our lecithin, and you're going to drizzle it all over the top of your syrup and butter. And then I'm just going to move this, hold on. And now you're going to gently stir until your syrup and butter starts to combine. Be very, very careful. As it starts to combine, you want to stir it from the center like this. So you're pulling your butter and your syrups from the side, and this is going to help to emulsify them. And emulsifying is bringing them together, bringing your water and your oil together as one solution, as one syrup. So my syrup seems to be crystallizing it a little bit here, so I'm going to add in a 1/4 teaspoon of citric acid. Alright, so once your syrup is all mixed, it's going to lighten up like this and it's going to go solid. Now you can add in your coloring and your flavoring. So I'm going to do this one Tutti Frutti first. Oops, I added a little too much, sorry. Normally I add in a capful, I don't know why I just went all freestyle there. And I'm going to add in the white, and the white is going to help to give a solid background for our color. And I'm going to do this one pink. Alright, so I was having a little trouble there for a little bit there. I thought this was actually going to be a flop because my emulsifier, my lecithin, wasn't coming together fully with my syrup. But I persevered and kept stirring, and it did come together. That graininess is now gone that I was having there, and I'm now getting a nice smooth candy syrup. So sometimes you might think it's a fail, but keep going. That's usually what the failure, probably like close to what it will be failure, is that it's just not emulsifying correctly. It's just not coming together. So you just gotta beat it a little bit better. So I'm going to just add in a little more color here. And now my syrup's getting a little bit thick here, as you can see, a little bit thick to work with. So I'm just going to turn my heat on to low, just to help melt, to keep it melted. So I'm just going to get this color mixed in and just get that melted. Let's say just get it heated up a little bit so it's a little more melted. And we'll get this poured into our molds. Alright, so with the butter and the lecithin, your syrup is a little thicker than if you were using the other method. So now I'm just going to pour it into my molds as best as I can. It's a little hard. If that happens, just scoop it off. We can clean that up later. Okay, so this syrup, I'm sorry, is a little too thick to try and put into the sucker mold, so I'll actually show you the sucker molds with the other one. I'm just going to fill the regular candy mold with these. And don't worry too much about it. The mess or it drips on the side. You can easily break those off and clean up your candy afterwards. So So yeah, it's a bit messy. Sometimes the other syrup you'll see works so much nicer. Now if you do overflow on those, just get a straight edge. It's a an offset spatula or a straight edge knife, and you can just scrape it off the top like so. I just scrape it on my table and clean it up afterwards. So that's it for our butter candies. Now we're going to let these sit. I'm going to finish filling up the molds. I'm going to let them sit until they are completely cooled, which takes about an hour or so. Alrighty, so for our tincture version, you're going to already have had pre-made up your canna sugar and your canna syrup. And so for this recipe, we are going to use the half a cup of canna sugar, half a cup of regular sugar, the 1/4 cup of canna syrup, and our 1/4 cup of light corn syrup, and our half a cup of water. Our citric acid does not go in until we are done cooking. If you put your citric acid in now, beforehand, it will actually make your syrup too hot and it will burn. So I'm just going to combine all our ingredients, and then once they're combined, I'm going to turn our heat on to medium-high until our syrup begins to boil. And also make sure to go all the way around the edges of your pot to make sure to get all that hiding sugar. Now you're going to find the difference if you try between the two recipes. This one is so much easier to work with. Alright, so I'm going to turn my heat on to their medium-high. I'm going to continue stirring until our syrup begins to boil. And I am going to wash down any of the sugar crystals here that have got onto the side of the pot. Now that your syrup has started boiling, you're going to stop stirring. You're going to attach your candy thermometer, and I also recommend to get the fan going, just because you are cooking, even though you're using the dehydrated sugar in that, there could still be some alcohol left over, and that can cause, you just want to have it ventilated. Now if your syrup starts to bubble up this too high and you're getting a little worried there, just pick it up off the heat, turn your heat down to medium, and place it back down. And you are going to let this cook now until your syrup hits 300 degrees. And the only thing that you're going to do here, like I said, you're not going to stir anymore. Only thing you'll do is if you see any sugar crystals or anything formed on the sides, just clean that up. And as your syrup gets close to temperature, don't forget to grab your pot of ice water. Alright, so I'm almost at temperature. I've got my pot of ice water ready. Let's stop hitting the camera. And 300. Remove your candy thermometer carefully. Put it in your sink and drop your pot bottom into the ice water until the bubbles start coming down. And also turn off your heat. Okay, so I'm starting fires here. Alright, so we've got our syrup here, and now I'm going to add in our flavoring. So I'm going to do a peach mango tropical punch thingy here. So I'm going to do a half a capful of each flavor. Sorry, a capful, I lied. Sorry, the jiggling of the camera, it's a little hard to work off. Now in some hard candy recipes, they'll tell you to put your flavoring in right away. You don't want to do that because see how that's vaping up there? That's your flavor actually burning off. So when you see that huge vape of smoke, that's all your flavor burning off. Okay, so those are my flavors. Just going to get them stirred in there a little bit. Now for the color. Now if I'm just going to add in yellow, I'm going to show you what that'll look like. Or actually I'm going to use peach. And you can use the liquid gel or the gel, these gels, the Wilton gels. Either one doesn't matter. Okay, not quite that much. So if I don't use the white and I just use the peach on its own, you have a translucent color, but it's not very pretty. Here, I'll put some on the paper here so you can see. It's not the prettiest of colors. Not horrible. But if you add the white in, it gives you a solid background. And it makes the color, the primary color that you want, stand out as the actual color. And so you can see also this syrup is a lot easier to work with. Stays much thinner. And the same thing though, if it starts to solidify a little bit on the bottom there, just put it onto your burner. It's still warm enough. It's still warm enough and it'll just get that all melted in. So I'm just going to finish stirring that up there. And I'm going to get this ready to pour into the molds. So once your syrup is all nicely one color, one uniform texture, we can get ready to pour it into the molds. See, that works a lot better. And if you're doing these lollipop molds, you want to bring them up right to their edges. If you don't, then when you put them together, you'll find that you'll end up with gaps. Oops, not that much. And then to put the mold together, just flip her over. Make sure that you do it on the right side. Just put it together and squish her down. And then you're just going to make sure that it's all well pushed down, nice and firm. And I'm going to fill up our little molds here. And that's it. We're just going to get these filled up and let them harden up, and then we'll get them out of the molds. Yeah, see, so much easier to work with. All right, now that our candies have cooled, we can take them out of the molds. So our first one with our butter, the ones that were kind of messy and yucky and trying to get them into the molds, just work them out. And then with a pair of kitchen scissors, you can always just cut around the excess and it'll just come off. And then you can just save that. You can also put it all, any excess, you could also put it back into a pot, melt it down if you do it in a double boiler, and or just put it over low heat, but be very careful. And you can remelt it and then recast them again. Now, what I would probably recommend is with the butter one, is as I said, you saw kind of how difficult it was getting in the molds, is to just lay it out onto a pan and score it, make score lines in it so that you can break it easily. You can kind of see, have a look at that. I did it in the cough drop video. And then here were my the Canna syrup and the Canna sugar ones. And the same thing, if there's any extra edges, you can just easily just snip them off. They come off really easily. Now let's have a look at our suckers. Oh, so far so good. There's still a little bit warm. Same thing though, just cut off any excess around the edges. Like so. You can also tap them off. And there you have it. 2 different versions of hard candies and lollipops. So as obvious, if you have any, as always, not as obvious, I apologize. As always, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And I will be back to say goodbye in just a moment. Oh, sorry, one thing I forgot to tell you. If your place is, you're good, the humidity's good, oops, you can just store your candies and just put them into a glass jar or into a candy dish, good to go. If there is any humidity or you find that they're sticky at all, you can toss them in powdered sugar or icing sugar, and again, store them in a glass jar or an airtight container. The icing sugar will help them from sticking together. So I hope that helps you out. So guys, that was my tutorial on lollipops and hard candies. I hope you enjoyed that. And as I said before, if you do have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And thank you guys so much for helping me get to the 9,000 mark. Well, it's probably a little bit over now. Yay! And again, to lots more recipes to come. I do keep a list of the suggestions that you make, and I will try to get through them as we go. So as I said, lots to look forward to in the future. If you're new to my channel, I do hope you subscribe. And if you enjoy this, I really do hope you share with your friends. So thanks again for joining, and you have an awesome rest of your day.